CEO and co-founder at GitLab, and we're having a call about replacing Jenkins at some of our customers. I think the typical landing spots for GitLab are version control and CI. We do way more than that. We do everything from portfolio management to the packaging, deploying, monitoring, securing, and defending applications. But those, the two things we started early were version control and CI, and that's gotten to be best in class. And in CI, most enterprises that are not using GitLab CI are using Jenkins. And I think we have to get a bit better in going from Jenkins to GitLab. For example, if you move from Bitbucket to GitLab, the version control move, there's an importer that helps you transition everything. If you go from Jenkins to GitLab, there's not an importer, there's not a converter. There is a little bit of documentation, but there's very few examples in it, as far as I know. And also, we can help with services, but I've not seen a very concrete offering. So all of that is based on limited information from my side. So feel free to talk about what we have, or even better, drop some URLs in the shared doc we have. But my goal would be, hey, if this is what companies want, we got to make sure that we make it easy for them. And every move between tools is a risk, and I think that risk is holding people back. So how can we de-risk it for our users and customers?
Yes, so I can certainly jump in, and just as you said, typically customers are landing a CM or CI, and what I would say is we see Jenkins is everywhere, north of 80% where we see it, and as you said, probably the key challenge isn't the lack of desire, because we find most customers want to migrate off, but it's incredibly painful. And I love, Patrick, I think you may have some examples and stories of some customers, and then we can talk about Sid. I think to really make it real, I think be a customer story, and we can talk about what we have in terms of services, and then I would love that we can talk a little bit about the product goals and vision of how we get, what kind of things we need to better provide options to our customers. But Patrick, would you mind just sharing one of your kind of examples of a customer that did migrate off and the time and cost it took?
Yeah, I'll maybe save customer names since this is recorded, but I was just at one customer who's actually been relatively successful doing it, and they sort of built a small team that spent a long time getting up to speed and becoming experts on GitLab CI before they were able to execute it. What we find is a lot of large enterprises, there's one company out here in Portland that I've been talking to, and they're experts in Jenkins, and so they maybe see the value, they see the benefits, but they don't really know how to do some of the same things, the same tools that they become experts in Jenkins. They don't know how to do those in GitLab CI. So there's definitely a learning curve that's a big part of it. I just did a workshop yesterday for a team of about 80 people at a large enterprise, and just teaching them some of the basics and explaining to them how things work really seemed to turn on a lot of light bulbs and get people confident that they can sit down during their busy day and build something in GitLab CI and start down that path. But there's definitely kind of a hesitancy from that learning curve.
Thanks. That's exactly what my assessment of the situation is too.
Yeah, and we currently have now a consulting service, and ranges in right now it's 4 to 8 weeks. There's a couple different ways we can approach that, but one of the things, we've had some great success stories of a large technology company and one in financial services, where we took anywhere between hundreds and thousands of pipelines and did an assessment around those, and were able to build new ones with GitLab and narrow down to standardize to the couple examples we had were between 2 and 5 pipelines that the teams could leverage. But Brendan, maybe you can talk through a little more around the current service offering. But I think one thing we'd love to see is kind of if give options to other customers that may not have desire or budget for a service offering like that. But Brendan, maybe you can talk through the current service offering a little deeper.
Sure. So I mentioned that we do mention it, and there are a number of customers where we've assisted with this. I think it's something that we want to, as a services team, standardize. So part of our goal in services is creating standard offerings. And so if we look at like the maturity model for services to be complete for a service offering, it has to have a standard offering, which we don't today for Jenkins migration. I mean, we mentioned it on our migration page, but migration is some of the least standard things that we do today. And so we're working to make that more standardized, have a kind of out of the box approach. The problem with it, I think, is the same problem maybe we'll hear from the product and engineering folks is there's so much in Jenkins that there's kind of 2 paths you can think of when you're converting, right? You can say, I want to convert my pipeline as is, right? And that's one path. Or I want to modernize what I'm doing with CI. And so sometimes customers can conflate the two. Sometimes they see either or both of those as daunting technical challenges because they have a lot of technical debt built into how they've stood up Jenkins today, right? They have like battle scars, if you will. That's, I guess.
Okay, Ben, we're going a bit detailed here. Yeah. You say we're working on a standardized offering. Can you show the work in progress?
Yeah, so there is an issue open. I will share that issue. It's one of many standardized offerings we want to add. So last quarter we added some, and we want to add many more. I'm going to get that issue.
Yeah, the components of the offer are basically a combination. The ones that we're looking at, Sid, would be a combination of training. So CI training.
Before we go there,
yeah,
what are the standardized services offerings we've already delivered?
Sure. So the standard service offerings we have today are all of our trainings. I'll link that in here as well. All the training offerings we have a quick start implementation with and without HA that's recommended for a different level of users. Our Jira, Jenkins, and LDAP.
Okay. Don't tell me. Like, give me the URL. If I Google GitLab services offerings.
Yeah, I just put the URL in the document. And then it's also linked to from our marketing page. It sounds like that's what you want.
So, okay, let me share my screen for a second. So I wasn't aware this existed. Now, I don't know everything. I don't follow everything. I'm sure you announce it internally. But this is a great offering. I love it. It's in the handbook. But the page I go to is like, if I Google GitLab training offering, I get to this page. And that doesn't link to the page that actually has the, oh, sorry, I'm flipping between things here a bit. That doesn't go to the page that actually has the training. So our training page doesn't link to the training we provide. So those are, I think, basic things we need to get right.
Yeah, so the list of training SKU, specialized training is a little different. Like if you, it's interesting to me that that's what you found in a Google search, because there's actually a level up from that. That's just like the education page that does list all of the different trainings we provide. Specialized training being one of them.
Okay, this is the first thing I found. I don't know my exact query, but from this page, there's no link back to a higher page.
Yes, that's
so I'm not able to. You know that there's a level above it, but
Yeah,
nobody on the page knows it.
breadcrumbs and an information architecture there. I agree.
David, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. So if you see, I think it just ended up where you landed from a training, from a Google search perspective, but if you go to educational services, it goes to the training and the description of the offers and pricing.
Okay, it seemed that the handbook had more links than the 5 that are on this page.
So there's 5 training offerings, and then there's also the quick start implementation offerings, and then the 3 integration offerings. So those weren't all training in the.
Oh, okay, makes sense. Cool. Yeah, so that looks good. Make sure we cross-link a bit more so people can find everything. But that looks good, and something like that standardized for Jenkins would be super helpful. And I think if we're not ready for standardization is a beautiful thing. But if we're not ready, just write down the stories that we already have. It takes half an hour to do 3 recordings where in 3 minutes you talk about how we migrated people from Jenkins. You have case study A, B, and C. You can talk about it. We can talk about it in this call, but it'd be super helpful to just start rolling and then embed that video from a page. So we have like a page that is migration services, make Jenkins a hyperlink, make a new handbook page, embed the 3 videos there. You can do that in half an hour, 3 2-minute videos. And suddenly it goes from something that's super abstract to like 3 companies have already done this. I'm not the first one. So let's iterate our way there. I'm not asking for a standardized offering tomorrow. I'm asking like, hey, instead of telling me in this call, just tell the video camera, put it on YouTube, embed it in the page, spend half an hour. And it's a world of difference, hopefully, in the mind of a customer who's looking at what we can provide.
Absolutely. We'll take that as an action.
I think also from these customers' perspective, in order to say we're truly going to take on this project and replace Jenkins, I think there's probably 3 key components. So like a mixture of some of these services that we see as individual SKUs that we need to provide as sort of the recipe. So there's the training and education, there's some of the standard migration services, and then there's probably an element of sort of change management or adoption facilitation that needs to happen after that. So once we've sort of taught them, we've provided some examples, there's some I guess service desk type work or level of support and assistance that they need in order to complete the transition. Rounding out some of the types of oddball questions, or when you give teams a basic offering, oftentimes they'll say, hey, we've got these corner cases and that's a showstopper. So you sort of need to be there and provide some extra facilitation to get past those blockers.
Hey, David or Brendan, I put this in number 12. Do you happen to know the percentage split of customers who desire to basically re-implement their pipelines in GitLab CI versus the ones that are wanting to modernize or re-architect?
I don't have any data, but I think just from anecdotally talking to lots of customers, generally what everybody wants is they want a clean migration. They want somebody to be able to push an easy button and have everything show up working the same way it was. Most of the dev teams want their pipelines to work basically the same way they did. They've got certain functionality, certain approvals, certain logging, certain reports. They've got all these things built into their pipelines that they want to be consistent and not change. If they have to rethink how they're doing their CI, that takes them away from rethinking how they're doing their product. And so they don't tend to want to do that. Some teams are more willing to do it than others, but certainly the default is we just want an easy button. We want somebody to make it work the way it is. And then we'll think about modernizing iteratively on top of that.
Okay, that's actually really good to hear, because based off of the way that you described it, it sounds like maybe it's more heavily weighted in favor of just import the existing pipelines into GitLab CI and get them working, rather than do a complete pipeline re-architecture. Is that correct?
Yeah, usually they would think about modernizing and improving those as like a phase 2 activity.
Okay, cool. So that's good, because based off of what Sid just posted right below, I think in number 13, that is something that I think we can work towards standardizing and building into the product, versus doing a push button re-architecture. That's not something that you can do without some sort of consultancy or understanding what the customer's end goal is. So that's really good to hear. I think, Sid, to answer your question on can we have an importer like Atlassian, the answer is yes. I know that we're going to talk a little bit later in a different forum to figure out some resourcing issues and prioritization calls. We'll tackle that there, but yeah, the short answer is yes. That issue is definitely alive and being prioritized behind some of the group import export work that obviously the other people on this call care very deeply about as well.
Yeah, and that would really help us fill out our offer for customers that want to do it yourself, kind of clicking that product level easy button, and we'd have a services option to help customers if they want to rebuild their pipelines and modernize. So I think that would be a great way to fill it out, especially customers in the commercial segment, where consultancy oftentimes is not an option due to budget.
Yeah, I think it would be great to obviously build something to help your team, David, but it would be even better if we could build something more generalized that customers could self-service, which is what I think what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm saying a self-serve option. Sometimes customers may want some help as part of that, but I'm talking exactly that. A self-serve option that all segments could drive themselves, or we could provide consulting that can have the combination of training, kind of consulting aspects and engineering to help to partner with them to help rebuild a subset of pipelines, let them go, kind of learn by doing, kind of ride along with them. So it gives us that product level easy button, as well as a services offer for if they want to take really modernize their CI.
Cool. I think we can end this meeting, but it'd be great to see at least the basics of an importer or converter. In the documentation, we need more examples. We'd like more specific, like serverless, maybe not an offering, but examples of things we did, examples of workshops we did. And would, of course, be great to see a case study with a named customer as well. This is one of our 2 ways in which we attract new customers. And right now that's not reflected in the detail with which we help people. So love to see more detail. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.